So I'm going to read another chapter from this book. Has anyone else figured out which book it is yet? Show of hands if you know. Okay. Well, so this chapter is called Obstruction, which means surrounded by obstructions, one must first retreat, then follow the direction of the sage. There's an old saying which fits this chapter, that you are caught between a rock and a hard place. In other words, you're surrounded by obstructions. As much as you may want to blame others for your difficulty, in all likelihood, the true obstruction is in your own thinking. What is called for now is retreat into self-examination and self-correction. Emotions of desire, fear, or anger may tempt you to take action now, but do not be seduced. The presence of these strong feelings is proof you're off balance and you need to steady yourself. As long as you try to forcibly achieve results rather than carefully following the higher truth, step by step, you'll be obstructed from making progress. Whenever we indulge in judgments about others, we obstruct our own peace of mind and progress. We should choose instead to see the best in others and allow them to come and go as they will and turn our energies inward towards self-improvement. Often, the faults in our own thinking are revealed only with the aid of others. You would be wise now to seek the advice of a qualified counselor or a truth-minded friend. Retreat, self-examination, and self-correction. Remove the obstructions that block your path now.
Is it the I Ching?
So,
you have to come next week to learn, right?
No, well, so that's the secret teaching. Okay, so aloha.
Aloha.
So thanks everyone for showing up today. Hopefully we'll be able to move through our obstructions, and maybe it means the projector's not going to work or something. Who knows? We'll see. I got some cool things today. So in the first class we covered the maintenance solution, getting that together. Second class was making fermented plant juice and that recipe. Third class was the last class was microbes, right? No. The third class was microbes, so IMO and lactobacillus, and those really powerful microbes. So we're going over a little bit more of that today, including kind of all those things we've seen so far. Last class was talking in depth about the nutrient cycle and how to get that going, and also the 3 enhancements we use. So today we'll be using some of those things as well. This is the 5th class in this series. Today's topic is doing soil foundation and how to get the microbes out into your situation effectively. Because that is, we've learned all about it. Now how do we use it? Last class was kind of teaching you how to do the sprays foliarly onto your plants. Today is going to talk about the microbes and getting them into the soil, so we can really establish soil foundation. Because if you don't have a foundation, you're always going to have problems in the things above. So if we're trying to grow trees, but we haven't addressed our soil, that's going to be an issue for us. So I started the other day with the food, because you got to eat first and provide food into the environment. But today we'll be showing you how to get really concentrated, like bringing in, when Gandalf came down and brought the army with him, and that's what we're going to do today. So they had the food was there. Gandalf did his stuff. Now he's back on his horse right at the right moment. And so what I brought today, you guys got the handout in front of you. Someone took mine, I think.
Do you have any more?
I think Michelle will print a few more. Can I borrow someone's?
Is that extra?
So we got this handout here today. There's more coming around, I think, when we get them. So I think I've been definitely amazing, Steve, with how many people are showing up here. So I really appreciate you guys. So I know I'm amazed they're able to host this as well as they can and find chairs for everybody. And some people are bringing their own too. Awesome, good choice. So today we got a formulation to do to make the microbes, as well as some information on how to actually effectively deploy these. So basically there's two scenarios. One is kind of a small garden area. And the other is like a large orchard. And you're going to do those differently just because in a small garden you're probably going to be spending more time in there and more intensive than you are out in a orchard scenario. In orchard scenario you want to go and visit it to harvest, but you don't want to be out in your orchard pulling weeds. So there's kind of these two different scenarios that I'm going to cover today, but the formulation's the same, just the amount of application and how you go about it will be slightly different. So what I brought a fair amount of stuff with me today. So first thing I think to get started is put the lid on tight. Didn't spill in my car though, I mean my truck. Okay, so what I have in front of me right here is an aerobically brewed microorganism tea. So what I did, I just typically when I'm doing this for my garden, my farm, I'm using trash cans. The trash can I use is like 30-40 gallons. So I'm doing a much larger scale. I didn't want to carry 40 gallons of water down here, so I just did this smaller bucket to do a demonstration. You can brew this larger up to maybe like 200 gallons, larger than that, you know, if you really see the need. Where Chris is doing 600 acres, he has a 250 gallon brewer. I did this just simply in a 5-gallon bucket. This is enough for my garden area that's about as big as this room right here. You know, is what I'm essentially using this 5-gallon bucket to treat. So what I put into here is my IMO 4. So this is my concentrated fungal spores, IMO, that have been, like we talked about, evolved for 20,000 years in the most supreme conditions. So this is the life inoculum. This is, like, when I smell it, smells like rich forest floor. This is highly concentrated fungal biology. So I put into here, I put a really large handful into this tank, and that's what I'm brewing. It's about like a cup per 5 gallons, roughly. But it's just an inoculum. So you just it's like putting enough seeds in there. More is not going to hurt you. A little less, and your biology just isn't going to grow as fast. So I found it's about a cup per 5 gallons is what I'm doing. Then into this bucket, I followed this formula right here. So the last week's handout gave you an expanded table of this. Today I just cut off the rest of that table with a little mask and then formatted it right in here, so that we're basically just looking at the first table, which is what I call soil preparation, and also sometimes called the seed soak solution. So this has the top 3 ingredients constitute our maintenance solution. So we're adding the food, the medicine, and the catalyst or stimulator, which is our vinegar. So our OHN, our FDJ, and our BRV. Those 3 things are always there. They're going to help stimulate our biology. Then the next thing on here is lactic acid bacteria. This is our emergency worker. So as we're brewing, if they have any problems, like all of a sudden there's thugs, they call the lactobacillus, they kind of set things straight. Maybe I somehow imbalance things a little bit, or there's temperature fluctuation happening while I'm doing it. They're going to help out and make sure the microbes, the IMO that I'm growing, are going to have a good time and be safe. They'll also keep other pathogens from taking over. The next one is FAA. And there's a little caveat to this. I didn't add it yet. I'm going to add it after I'm done brewing, before I put it out. If I add it while I'm brewing it, things get too nuts. It's crazy. I brew the wrong stuff. It gets too nuts. So this isn't in there yet, but it will be added before I use it. So I don't brew it that. Then there's water-soluble calcium phosphate, which is our bones. So last week when we talked about this, I said that you use one or the other. You either use fish amino acid or water-soluble calcium phosphate. You'll notice I included them both in this recipe. It's because this recipe is going into the soil. If I was putting it up into my plants, I would be confusing them by sending them the same on-off signal at the same time, and they wouldn't know to be on or off. It's both signals coming out. When I do it in the soil, both of these components are necessary, and the soil doesn't respond that way. It can handle both. So it's not as fragile as a living. It's a little bit different of a system. The plant might get confused, but the soil, you can include both of these.
But there's no amount of WCA listed.
It's WCP, CalPhos.
Oh, right.
Yes, so I included CalPhos and fish amino acid, which are both on both sides of the scale, and I'm including them both because I'm putting it into the soil. So both of those are going to help my soils out. And then the last thing on here is seawater, which I just use sea salt. And so for every liter of water, I added about 1 gram of salt, which is, so you can measure that out if you want.
While you're brewing, you have that in.
That's in there already. So the only thing that wasn't added in is the fish amino acid that's added at the end. Or you can dilute the seawater at this recommended thing here. So for 1 gallon, you're putting 125 milliliters in there. And that will get you a 1 to 30 dilution, which is the same salinity as your blood. So it'll help the microbes. Sea salt or seawater itself also contains diverse microorganisms. So if you're using seawater, you're getting a little bit more diversity into here. Question?
If you lived right across from the ocean, how much do you perhaps reduce it?
So it's to help. So the question is, if you live near the ocean, should you reduce the seawater? This is to help this biology grow. So including it in this brew, you should be fine. There is one other thing that I did not list on here. And that's what's in this jar. Anyone know what this stuff is? It's worm poop. It's tasty. Tasty worm poop. This is worm castings. So we have a worm farm that we use. We use a tower system when we grow worms. I have worm castings right here. Sometimes into this brew, I'll just use the leachate, which is the liquid that comes from worm farming. I have a little tap and I just drain that off. Sometimes I'll use the leachate. In this case here, I have the castings. So this is just this solid, it looks like pudding kind of stuff. Doesn't taste like pudding, but. But I've found that this is a vital component to this process. What's contained in these worm castings are humic and fulvic acids. If you start to look up humic and fulvic acids, you'll find all kinds of really cool research about them. They are really complex carbon chains, and fungus love them. So when I started with my IMO here that was hibernating, it was the fungus out in nature is waiting for like a tree to fall. It doesn't want to just sprout for no reason because there's no food source. So it's waiting for like a tree to fall. The tree falls, now all of a sudden this spore that was there for hundreds of years or 5 minutes, or it sees that food source and it sprouts. And now it'll go up into that tree and into that food source. So what I do is I simulate what's in the tree, which is humic and fulvic acids, by including this into my tea. So the microbes see the worm castings, they see the humic and fulvics, and they sprout to say, okay, there's good food out there, it's time to go, let's get ready, let's sprout, let's reproduce. They have what they need. So I found to take it from a hibernating form and really have it proliferate, all these other foods plus humic and fulvic acids really make good biology grow in a tea in a relatively short amount of time. The worm castings also have diverse biology. Put this under the microscope, I'll see nematodes, all kinds of interesting things that are in there. You can buy humic and fulvic acids. They sell concentrated, they make it from leonardite. It's a form of coal, and they get out the stuff, and you can use those. Those will work. So if you don't have access to a worm farm, you can look up buying humic and fulvic acids. However, when I went to the Ohana greenhouse, or the shop, the grow shop right by the Toyota dealer in town, I asked them, do you have humic and fulvic acid? All of them were like super diluted. I was like, I'm not going to buy this whole product just to get this tiny, so I want like 100% concentrated stuff. And I know it exists. You probably have to go on Amazon to get that. Go to Amazon. I find it's easier to do a worm farm. Really easy to do. We get a lot of other benefits from this. So those are the components I'm adding. What's listed on here, plus the humic and fulvic acids that I'm adding. Question?
How much do you add of that when you're casting or anything?
I added about this much into this 5-gallon bucket. It's a good question, because there's another way to get humic and fulvic acids is to take composted material and run water through it, not spraying water to spray it, but just put water through, and the water that'll drip out will be brown in color. If you can get that water to be looking like an 80% chocolate bar, you have the right amount of humic and fulvics. So when I'm taking this amount and I'm like smushing it and mushing it into the water, my water is turning brown like a chocolate bar. And when I see that, I know I got enough humic and fulvics in there to do that. So there's a few ways to obtain humic and fulvic acid. Highly recommend you look it up and start taking it as a supplement. Maybe not from the worms, but it's It is really good stuff.
Right. So I was reading that you can use the juice from a larva bin in your compost tea. Is that similar to, does it have those same acids in the juice from a larva bin, or is it different?
So he's asking, the question is, can you use it from like a larva bin? Can you use the leachate from there? I wouldn't, I don't know. My answer is I don't know, but I know the worms have it because it's in the worm's gut, and as it goes through the worm's body, that's what they're producing. That's why worm castings are so good, because they're highly concentrated in it. So I don't know, but I know it is in worms.
And that goes in the brewing part.
Yep, all that's in the brewing part. The only thing I didn't, so all that stuff I just talked about is in there except the fish amino acid. That's the last thing I'm going to add.
What kind of worm?
Red wigglers, yeah. So, the next thing I add into this, because I'm brewing an aerobic tea, is I have a serious air pump.
Does it have to be that serious?
So I am brewing, typically I said I'm brewing trash can size stuff. I'm brewing, larger things. I have a serious air pump because it's not like a little fish aquarium thing that's making bubble. This thing is serious. And you need that kind of oxygen. You need it to look like boiling pots, like boiling when it's going. It's not just like a little piddle drop bubble coming up. So you don't, you could probably find something a little smaller than this if you're going to do 5-gallon bucket size. But make sure you're getting the phenomenon of it looks like it's boiling, not just like, oh, there's like a scuba man down there swimming in my bucket and he's exhaling once in a while. No, you want to see that thing boiling. Boiling. So I take this pump, I got a long hose on it because I keep it under my house and I brew outside. I like that one too because it's pretty quiet. Then I have an air disc. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Some like diaphragm looking things that are easier to clean. This is the air disc that I use. It looks a little dirty right now because I was brewing this and then I took the stuff, put it in the car. Usually when I'm done with this, I soak it in vinegar and I clean it really well, because if I have biology starting to grow in here, every time I use it subsequently, they're going to infect what I'm brewing. So I try to keep this thing super clean. Right now it's, it looks like this because I just did what I did, but this whole system, I keep it really as clean as I possibly can, although it gets a bunch of crud on it from just brewing. So this is 6-inch air disc. You could get like an 8-inch one. It depends on what your pump can drive. This pump can probably drive 3 or 4 of these this size discs. I usually run 2 off of it. So when I'm doing a trash can, I actually have 2 of these. But I just run it through a garden hose. But I take this guy and I drop it down to the bottom. And now my tea is bubbling and boiling and moving and going, and I'm going to brew some amazing stuff in here.
Does that heat up too, or no, it's just bubbles?
It's just bubbles coming out of the air.
So where do you get the disc?
I got that at the grow shop right by Toyota dealer. Right in town. By Hilo.
Lots of little bubbles.
What the disc does is it distributes the air. So if I didn't have this disc on here and I just put this in here, I'm going to end up with that, which is like a scuba man. That's not what I want, right? Because that's not even stirring this thing up. It's not doing what I want. It's just like, it's like a kid blowing bubbles in their water and you're like, what are you doing?
See how this is going to help the microbes?
Yeah. So what this does is it takes this air thing, which is kind of nice, and it distributes this over the surface. So if you see, if air's coming out of this whole thing really finely, it's making fine bubbles. There's a couple different, you can get like air stone. I use an air disc. It's just a porous rock that's like spreading the air out.
So if there's a aquarium or stone with surfacing.
As long as you're able to get it for your size to see this phenomenon. Like, I mean, this is kind of overkill for this 5-gallon bucket, like this right here for this. I'm usually brewing a bigger tank, but you see the effect of what I'm going for, right? It's like, it's bubbling, the whole system's moving, it's doing really good things.
How long do you let that bubble for?
So, once I got this set up, the question is, how long do I bubble it for? This tank that I did right here is 36 hours. So I started it the other day in the evening. I started it on, Tuesday evening. It bubbled all through Wednesday, and here we are this morning. So it's about 36 hours roughly. That's about your sweet spot for growing your best fungus.
Do you have to add additional sugar or any other food to boost the proliferation?
So the question was, do I add any other additional foods other than the foods I've already added? And the answer is no. These foods are sufficient here. So do not, I'll say this, do not use molasses. If you go on the internet and look up compost tea recipes, they'll tell you use molasses, do these things. What I found is molasses creates tiny bubbles. These bubbles do not pop. So the outside of this bubble, there's lots of oxygen, all kinds of aerobic growth happening, the good growth you want, good life is growing. Inside the bubble, no oxygen. They're like, oh, really bad things start happening inside this bubble. Then it pops. And so now you've grown good stuff out, junk stuff pop, and now you're polluting your good stuff with the stuff that's growing inside here. So don't use molasses. You'll see a lot of things that'll call for that. We're trying to grow the IMO. We're trying to grow really good aerobic stuff. These other things have the foods you need. You don't need molasses to add.
Rick, 36 hours, is it the same in the 5-gallon bucket and the garbage can, 36 hours, or is it relative to the
I'm uncertain about that. So the question is it the same in a 5-gallon bucket as a trash can for your 36 hours? I'm very uncertain about that in terms of I'm brewing trash cans. 36 hours is my sweet spot. That's why I brought this guy. So, is it good? Is it bad? What did I brew? Microorganisms, microscope. So what we are going to do here is look at the tea we brewed and see, is this good? Is it worth my time to go spray it? Did I do the right stuff? Can I adjust my ratios a little bit? We're going to go and actually see that and see through that mystery today. So that's what I brought here, so we're going to get onto that. So I'll take a few questions before we get onto there, start in the back.
36 hours have to be consistent, like if you're off the grid and you don't want to run the generator for 8 hours or 36 hours straight.
Yes, so the question is, do you have to brew it for 36 hours straight? The answer is yes, you would have to brew it for 36 hours straight. If you can't do that, there's other methods that I'll go through. So this is the way I'm doing it to get what I want. But don't put oxygen, cut it off, put oxygen, like you will have really weird stuff. You want a consistent growth happening. I here just took it from my house. Here it should still be fine. You know, I'm not trying to bubble it here to grow it anymore. I'm just showing you guys for demonstration purposes.
If I'm feeling a little intimidated by making IMO 4, could I add IMO 2? Would that do good things?
So that's a great question. So she's asking, can I use IMO 2 instead of IMO 4? And that is why I brought this down here today to show you how to make this tea and how to do it, because I haven't shown you guys how to make IMO 4, so go ahead, use this IMO 2.
How much?
Same amount that I was going to add for the IMO 4 into it.
Okay.
So roughly a cup, a little less than a cup, maybe 3/4, you know, like, but a gobbing handful into here. You're going to use a little bit more, or, you know, you're using a lot of IMO 2 to do this. Usually that's as much as you put into a whole 200-pound pile of IMO 4. But because these guys are not as developed, they're like elementary school kids, you got to add a lot more of them, and then they'll adapt to get into the situation. So you can totally use IMO 2 here to do it. Yeah, the dog wants to eat some.
But doesn't IMO 2 plus 3 equal IMO 4?
So it's a sequential process. So as you're going through, you go from IMO 2, then you put it in, you grow it in a pile, then you go to the next process to make IMO 4, you grow it in a pile. So, yeah, question?
Maybe I missed something, but I don't see that you add IMO to this by
No, it's not listed on that recipe right there specifically. I kind of just told you what I had added in here. So it's not listed on the ingredients here, nor is the worm castings. But those two things are added in. That's like, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Is the IMO 4 that they sell at KTA not viable?
So the question is, the IMO 4 they sell at KTA not viable? So when I passed around those two things of IMO, I passed around the IMO the one that was no good, and you smell it, you smell that ammonium smell coming off it. Then I passed around the good one. You want to use the good one to do this stuff. So smell the KTA one, make your own observations on it. I'm unsure of the process they're going through to make it right now. They used to make it in a big machine, and it used to happen really fast. And from what I know about microorganisms, I'm really looking for fungus. So as we start to use this microscope, we start to look what's inside. I'll show you what I'm looking for. So you can take the IMO there and brew it. I've never done it with the KTA stuff, but brew it, see what you get. And this tool is your ultimate of, is it good, is it bad? Because that's kind of subjective without this scientific tool to make objective, really solid decisions. Because, I mean, you can just use it on your plants too. If your plants grow, then fine, you know. But this way I can do, you know, biological analysis really easily. Is there a question in the back?
So you can just use it on your plants and that's why it's not going to be damaged if it's not there.
Yes. Yeah. So my thought process on this is the stuff you get from KTA is higher in its bacterial content. Our land has lots of bacteria. Adding more bacteria to a bacterial system will not make a difference. What I'm brewing here is highly fungal, and I want to shift that bacterial-based land into a fungal-dominant system, which then is more compatible for the plants I'm trying to grow. So, yes?
So you said to add the FAA later. Would you add that?
No, it is not in there yet. So it is not in there yet. We'll do it right at the end.
Could you use a holy vortexer instead of the air bubbling?
Yes. So the question is on different types of brewers. There's a lot of types out there. I made a really cool one based on like Tesla and all kinds of cool ideas. And it turned water into stuff that tastes like coconut water in about 16 hours. So the biology that grew in it, the way it worked, it had like crystal, all kinds of cool stuff. But you can go. This is just the simple way. I mean, relatively. Question?
How would, if it would at all, how would this recipe change for an orchard, since orchards I would imagine require a higher funding compared to something like a vegetable garden?
So the question is, how would this compare for tree cropping versus vegetable cropping? From what I found here, this you need the fungus almost everywhere. Everywhere I go and I soil sample, we're fungus deficient. I don't see any of those. Subsequently, there's no higher orders. There's no protozoa and nematodes because the fungus hasn't created the structure. So your soil food web is collapsed down to the bacterial level, which is the base of the pyramid. Your next layer up on it from bacteria is fungus. Once fungus are established, they can then build homes for nematodes and protozoans, which then makes everything else on top work, microarthropods, all those other things come in. So, yeah, so since we're all down here at the base layer, we're just adding the second foundational layer. So the fungus creates structures like this, then people can come in and use them. Without it, the bacteria is just like a pile of lumber. You need something to create the structures, and that's what the fungus does. Okay, so I'm going to turn this thing off. Okay, so I think the right flow to do this here is to do a little bit more hand waving stuff, because that's going to take me a minute to get the microscope set up. So I'll talk a little bit more about those two scenarios, the last, and then the next, after we have a break, then we'll do the microscope to get that set up so that I can do all that. So if you understand what I'm doing, why I'm going through this process, I'm trying to get a lot of good fungus in my system. And then, because I'm bringing out, it's Gandalf's army, right? They're coming, they've got to be all ready and like stoked and so I just brewed like 1 trillion guys. That came with a handful of stuff, added some food. They did all their training and stuff in this bucket. Now I'm ready to go spray it out. So this scenario right here works really well for orchards, larger areas. It's typically what I'm doing, how I get things out to my garden. However, if I'm growing more intensive stuff, like where I'm growing my leafy greens, although they're not happening right now because Susanna's gone, but where Susanna's growing our leafy greens, I use the solid IMO 4. So in a really intensive small area, this becomes affordable because I can drop IMO 4. I'm not trying to go out and do a 12-acre orchard. I'm trying to just do a small intensive area where it really matters a whole lot to me. So I have these two scenarios. Big area and or doing it more regularly. I use this to set up my soil foundation in a small area. That in my garden typically I'm tilling a whole lot too. Grow sweet potatoes. Now I've broken up all the soil structure. I want to go rebuild that soil structure. I harvest my ginger. I've messed up everything. I want to reset my soil structure. So I am using this solid bokashi here. Yes.
What kind of density did you test that out?
So good. I'm going to get to all that here. So the method of what I'm doing here is taking my solid stuff, identifying my area, and the application rate that I'm using to put this into my garden is about 5 pounds per 100 square feet. So this tent here is 10 feet by 10 feet in one of these tiny squares. The whole thing is like, is a 20 by 20. So one of these little squares right there is a 10 by 10. So in that area, I'm putting 5 pounds of the stuff, which I didn't bring a scale or anything, but it's, you know, it's
Half a gallon.
so when I'm going to talk about, this is IMO 4 that I'm using, correct? Correct. Yeah, so the recipe is 5 pounds of IMO 4 per 10 square feet. However, when I do that, if it's a little more wet or a little more dry, that's going to affect my weight a lot. So measuring this by weight to say that is just to get you sort of in the ballpark. What I'm looking for is to create a dust. So the entire thing, my entire area that I'm treating has a fine dust over it. Not like a thick layer, and you know, in not areas that aren't covered, but I just scatter it to create a dust. I would do it right here, but I think they'd get mad at me. Their building would start decaying and stuff. But I'm just creating a fine dust. And I actually didn't bring in really enough. I just kind of brought it enough to do it. A little hand waving and stuff. Concept being here that what I'm trying to do is to get this dust across so that there are microbes that are going to cover my entire surface. Because they're aerobic and they want to be up at the top and they want the oxygen, I'm just creating an entire dust. It's like creating a cell phone network with coverage everywhere. Right? For good or worse, you know, like that analogy works for us. You're putting enough guys everywhere so there's not a spot where you don't have coverage. Then what I'm doing after I've created that dust is, if you look at this little diagram here, it says here's your 100 square feet or 10 by 10. The first week, week 1, and this is like ideal conditions. Do I do this? I try to do it as best as I can. This is the my garden right around my house. I'm able to do this. I still haven't even sprayed the bananas the other day. We did this up at my banana place. It's there though. I might get to it today. I don't know. We'll see. Is to spread the IMO out, and this is in week 1. If you can, include some biochar while you're doing it. Just mix them together and then throw a little biochar out. It's going to be good. It's going to stay in your soil. It's a 1,000-year investment you're making with the biochar. You can buy it commercially here at the store. So, sorry to be ambiguous, but if you want to, I'll do a little plug for my friend, Pacific Biochar, Josiah Hunt, local. He lives down on Papaya Farms Road. Super awesome guy. Check it out, pacificbiochar.com. He'll sell you, if you're a Farmers Union member, I think you'll get a discount. Question? Can you speak up? Yes. Yes. It is fine. IMOs actually improve your respiratory system. So they use it as a treatment to improve respiratory problems. Skin problems, respiratory problems. If you made good quality IMO 4, it'll improve those conditions. Just like it's improving our soil. Our soil is like our skin. Our lungs are like even more folded up, just like skin. So these things really help. So if you want, wear a dust mask. I just do it without it. This type of microorganisms I work with, awesome. Works really well for me.
How do you get it more into dust form from what you have?
So this right here is pretty darn dusty.
Okay. And the big chunks you feel worried about?
Once I've made really good IMO4, there probably aren't any big chunks. There's some wood chips and stuff still mixed into here, but good IMO4 will turn like this. If you do have big chunks, no need to break them up. Just spread them out. So, still on week 1, I spread, this is all in the same evening, like it's about 5 o'clock, sun setting. I'm, go out there, spread my stuff, spread my biochar. If I had it on hand, I really recommend it. And then, especially in a garden, it's really a good investment. Then I'm going to water in the same solution here that I had brewed. I'm going to then water that onto my area. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm putting the microbes out, and then that water is feeding them. It's also soaking into the ground a little bit as I'm watering it out. What that triggers the microbes to do is to penetrate down into the soil. They'll follow that food down there. They'll say, oh man, did you see that comfrey FPJ? I'm going to go get that. And you'll bring some OHN. Oh, awesome. I'll see you down there. And they're going to go down into the soil. So you've got this layer on top, and now you got this microbe starting to penetrate down into your soil. This is going to make that soil depth grow because you had the microbes on top. You don't necessarily want to bury them too much. And they will start to chase it down where they're making holes and tunnels. And you should get your top yay much, maybe to an inch wet so they can start to go down there. I typically do, instead of watering with a water can, I typically do this with my sprayer. I just spray the area and just drench it heavy. Way more than when I'm doing a tree, I'm just getting it wet. When I'm doing the soil, I'm just like sitting there just like spraying it. And I like to use that because it distributes it really well, whereas a watering can kind of can't get as good distribution. But watering can works. Try to get one that's going to fan out your water so it'll go down.
How many gallons?
It says on here 5 gallons per your 100 square feet. If you're in a really dry area or it hasn't rained for a while, increase that to like 20 and put a lot more water. But typically around here it rains so much, 5 gallons is going to be more than sufficient. The soil's already going to be wet. You're just going to get those nutrients out there to go down.
Just to be clear, you're watering in with the aerobic fluid gas.
So, just to be clear, yes, that's a great question. So, I have, right now, I did this tea here. Right now I'm talking about solids going out. I could brew this if I wanted to and bubble it before. I don't have to. You can just mix it up and use it. So you can use this raw, almost like raw, like mix it, water it. It's, like I was saying the other day, if you let this mixture here sit for about 12 hours before you water it, it's going to be even better. But you could just, oftentimes, I come home, I mix the stuff in the barrel. While it's all going, I spread and I spray. It's all one motion. I'm just, my time, my value is what I prioritize. Question? I brought it. It's here somewhere. Right here. This is the sprayer I use. This cost about 2 months worth of my work. So either I need to get paid more or, I don't know.
Can you repeat that?
So hang on. Yes.
Repeat it one more time. So you come home and spray it raw. You're talking about this as of the aerobic tea that you made, or just your renewable solution?
Okay, so just to clarify on the I know I talked about 2 things. This is here. Forget this for now. We're talking about now I got a fresh bucket of water. I'm putting these things in. I'm dusting my area that I want to grow. I'm taking that bucket and I'm watering that onto my area.
With no bubbler.
With no bubbler in this case over here. Because I'm, in this case here, I'm really trying to grow the biology in this bucket. In this case over here, the biology is in my dust. So there's no need to bubble. It's right here. It's in my dust. I'm spreading this dust out. The biology is right here. I've just then got to add foods to that. So in this case over here, biology, food. In this case over here, biology and food, because I'm growing it all in one thing.
So you're just propagating the microorganisms to spray on a larger area, acreage.
Yeah, because it's
orchard.
Yes, and yeah. So the question is, in this case, I'm trying to propagate more of the microbes to spray in a larger area. The answer is yes. It's often a lot easier to go and get spraying equipment and go drive through something and spray it all than it is to go spread this stuff and then go water it all. Like that's why I do this over here in a garden where I have, it's manageable. I do this over here. We fill up. We have a 50-gallon sprayer. We load it on the tractor. We just drive through and spray the whole land with this. Okay, so question.
So great. So you're spreading your stuff. You're topping it off with your solution. I have a question. Would it be beneficial before you spread it, maybe an inch or two in the soil, put some kind of food down for it?
Food down for it.
Well, we're giving it a little top dressing with our solution, our SOS liquid. Would it be beneficial to feed it in any other way?
Perhaps. I know this is sufficient right here. I got my microbes, I got my food. If you want to do composting or whatever else you want to do, awesome, cool. I also, in my garden, I mulch a lot. So I'm either spreading this on top of the mulch or incorporating. I don't want to bury it too much under mulch. Like I don't want to bury it, but I'm mulching and I just put it on top of the mulch. By the next day, I do it in the evening. By the next day, it's already, the microbes have gotten into that mulch. They're in there. They're happy. They found their home. They found where they wanted to be. So I mulch with grass clippings. Sometimes I use thick mulch. I use a bunch of leaves. I use all kinds of stuff to mulch with. And I just spread this on top. However, if you are mulching with something like a banana leaf and you're spreading this stuff and then it's gonna wash off the side and it's not gonna go right beneath, take the mulch off, the banana leaf, put it down, and put it down, then put that stuff back over, because you're trying to get, because otherwise you'll have holes where it's like, can you hear me now? And it's like, no, there's nobody here. So in a garden area where I'm trying to get all this coverage, hook the whole system up, that's what I'm doing.
Water, city water, local water, does water have any influence on what's in the microscope?
Water is by far one of your most important factors out there. It's way too more complex of a topic for right now.
So if you already have an established garden that was done maybe like lasagna with, different layers of things, obviously you don't want to start all over. So you've got things growing in your garden, you can just do this process as if you were preparing a new bed.
Yep. So the question is, if I have an existing thing already, can I use this? Yeah, just go for it. Top dress, soak it with the nutrients to
Just try
all
and
go
get
down.
under the leaves of the plants that are growing, so it's a soil drench.
Yeah. I mean, as best as you can. Make it as easy for you as you possibly can, and with the knowledge of what you're trying to do. You're trying to create this cell phone network of microbes that are going to work through. If you already got material there's already microbes, but these guys are like superhero trained. They're going to motivate all those other microbes. They're going to say, hey, check this out. We can drink water out of the air. And all these other guys are like, man, I can only drink when they brought the hose. Like, man, you can drink water anytime? That's amazing. And the guy's like, yeah, we just store it in this jar they put us out with. Now we got electrical conductivity. We're online, power, water, internet, Verizon. Like, Boom.
So you put your char under your mulch, right? Before you spray.
Either way, the char is going to work. Yeah. It's best to put the char onto the soil. If there was any one thing I was going to incorporate into my soil, which I don't do incorporation just because it's way too much work. If I was going to incorporate one thing, I would incorporate the char into the soil, just the char. But I'm not, yeah.
Is there a certain moon phase that you recommend for spreading?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Is there a specific moon phase for this? I wrote an app that does Hawaiian moon phase stuff, both for Android and the iPhone. The iPhone one is called Mahina, Hawaiian moon calendar. And the Android one is called Kahuna. Yeah. And she got it right there. Yep. So that was my pitch. The specific moon phase is La'audes is the best to do it. That's the day. So it's right after the full moon. That's when you're typically La'au. Yep. Yep.
So when it's waning.
Yep, right after the full moon at that time.
Best to apply.
Yeah.
There's a nice calendar out there that has the phases too. In Hawaii.
Yeah, so,
Another question.
but what I found too is like, you know, when you can do it is good too. It's definitely my first suggestion.
For your second application that you talked about, dusting, putting your amendments in the water and then just spraying it on, are you adding the worm castings to that? Or the humic acid also?
Yeah, you can mix them into this water. Okay. Yeah, you're going to get benefit. Yeah.
So because they're trying to grow the fungus and microbes underground, that's why we're going with the waning, like a root crop.
I suppose. I mean,
Doesn't matter.
yeah, I'm right today. This is my expertise. Okay, so that was week 1. Cool. I put out the microbes. I put out the biochar. I've watered it in. Next week comes, I should add the liquid again. Because you really want to establish those microbes out there, feeding them, getting that into the soil. You don't need to put more microbes out. They're already there. But you do need to feed them. I mean, you don't need to. If you want it to work, ideally, you should feed them. And 2 weeks of this, if it's a garden bed you've really been working well on, 2 weeks of doing this, you should be really good. If it's a new bed or you've severely destroyed the soil or disturbed the soil, you doing it for a whole month, just once a week, coming out watering that, now your soil foundation is going to be so solid, that whole network. You know, anywhere you go, you got cell coverage, they got water, they got electricity, you got a place to like poop properly, you know, it's like, it's awesome. So it's over the, you know, this week process of doing it, and the reason is to get that established. If you can and you're starting fresh, you could do this with just your mulch on your bed. Set up this soil foundation, and after you've been doing this for the 2 or 4 weeks, then you go plant your seeds. You're going to plug your plants into an existing network. Instead of having to go out and pioneer everything, they come in and there's already cell phones. It's like kids born today, they already got a cell phone, you know? It's like, no, whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but they do, right? It's crazy. So the more you can do that ahead of time, the better. If you already got things, don't worry about it. Just kind of go through this. You understand the concept of what you're doing. What we do when transplanting seeds, if you're going to do a transplant or a seeds you soak them in the microorganism. You soak them in the same recipe here. You can soak them in there. Depends on how fast they germinate, for how long you should soak them. It's anywhere between 2 hours, or 15 minutes up to like 4 hours of soaking. You don't want it to sprout in your seed soak. What you want to do is the microbes get in there, they kind of soften things up, and they get into your seed. So when your plant sprouts, it now has full coverage. So if I got the microbes coated on my seed, now I sprout, this leaf comes out, it's coated in beneficial microbes, so there's no room for a disease pathogen to land. So seed soaking is hugely vital for what we're doing. And sometimes people, they tell me, oh, I like to do it in my mouth or something. Well, just spit in the thing and then stir it up and soak it, and now you got your microbes plus their microbes plus the whole system going. And you just soak them a little bit. Typically, you dry the seeds after that so they could go through a cedar or whatever a little easier. Sow them into your ground that you've been preparing this way. Your first leaf, like Ginger John's going to talk this Saturday. I hope you come check him out. And look at the excitement he has. He's like, you know, he's just like, man, the first time I did this, my poha was like 10 times the size of that one. And it's like, it's true. You do this, you do it right, and your plants just respond because they have all these supporting microbes to help them out. And it's totally true.
Do you use it to sprout the seeds that you eat as well? Or is it in the food?
You could, yeah. You could use the same solution to sprout your seeds. That would be awesome. Don't include the worm juice in that. And you may want to be careful with the IMO. Because I eat it, but I don't recommend anyone else do that unless, you know, you want to be as like me.
Dehydrate.
Right? Oh man, they're all eating IMO. They're all like out saving the world. Like, oh, okay. The internet's full of even more memes. We don't need more of that.
Eats worm poop. He likes it.
Transplants. I already got something growing. I want to transplant it. It's a common scenario. So what's recommended is, in the case of like a tree, stop watering it for like 2-3 days before. Case of lettuce type, you know, leafy greens, stop watering them for a day before. You're going to stress them out a little bit, but they're about to go through a stressful scenario. So you stop watering them a little bit, give them a little, take them, bare root them, soak them then in this seed soak. So what you're going to do is you're going to make them a little thirsty, a little stressed, then you're going to put them into this amazing seed soak water. The plant's going to take all that up into its tissue. Now you got this plant that's fully loaded. And when I transplant this into this existing network, now those microbes are like, hey, you got that same stuff we like. And they're going to immediately join together and create this network and completely network this plant in.
What if you don't have like enough electricity to make the liquid stuff and you're just doing the dust? What do you do with the food garden?
Same thing here. Just do this. Like, forget this. I'm over here without my electricity, and I'm just making this recipe in a bucket, and then I'm taking my seeds that I haven't watered, and I'm soaking them in there. So the roots are bare. They're going in. I just put this little graphic here with this tree with this like little pyramid thing beneath it. I was really last night trying to draw this in a way, and I was just like, well, that'll work. What it means is when typically we go to plant a tree or we go to plant something, we dig a hole deep. Well, not out here, but but we often or you get a bulldozer to rip something, right? And you rip a hole into the ground. Now you rip this hole. And then you put this tree in there because you want it to grow well, right? You've now taken this tree that wants to be up on the surface and reaching out, and you've put it into a hole. All the water is now draining into that hole, not going in. Now you're keeping the roots too wet. You got all this stuff. The tree doesn't even want to be in this hole. You put it in this little thing. Then we pack that hole with nutrients. We just pack that hole. We like, oh, I'm going to add in some fish. I'm going to add in some into this hole. The tree's in this hole, and it's like, for the first little bit, it's like, oh, cool, you added some fish and stuff. And you get this good growth early. Almost all the trees you plant like that, after a year or two, start to die. Why? Because they grow too much root. They can't get enough oxygen. They're dropping leaves. Only the leaves will be at the tips, and the plant will start to die in this hole, this coffin, you know, that we thought that we're like, yeah, we'll plant it, we'll put it in a hole. What this graphic symbolizes here is don't dig a hole like a hole down. Instead, dig a hole like that looks like this and goes up, and so your tree is going to sit in the middle of this pyramid. Out here, it's even easier. You don't even need to dig a hole. Mound all this stuff up with well composted mulch. So treat it, you know, don't use fresh raw mulch. You won't get good results, but compost a little bit, add a little lacto. Add that and just pile it on the surface. Create this scenario where what you want to do is put the middle of the tree there and then spread the roots out. If you got a taproot, you can cut the taproot at about, cut the bottom third of it off, which will trigger it to grow more lateral roots. And so as you put this tree there, you spread the roots out. Now the roots are going to want to grow on the surface out. And what you've done is you've put all the microbes around it, and so it's going to grow into this rich network where majority of your nutrition is happening in the top inch anyway. The roots don't want to be down in the ground. They actually want to be up on the surface. That's where the organic matter is falling. That's where the biology is living. The deeper we can make that layer, the better, but they're going to want to be up at the top. So when you put the roots so they can grow out this way, awesome. You may need to brace your tree off and put a pole there with, like, you know, drive a stick or brace it so it doesn't blow over. But within about a month or so, it should be well rooted enough you can take that brace away. You know, we often want to anchor the tree in the ground, but it doesn't want, it wants to just be set loosely so it can grow out, so it can reach out. Question? Same thing. Envision it's rock. You really want to grow on the surface. So your hole you're digging just... You don't want to go down below. The tree, it's not going to go down there anyway. There's no nutrients down there. There's no reason for it to go down. All the biological activity is happening up on the surface. Not all, but like 99% of it or something. Question?
So just for the IMO2, is that a good addition to this liquid solution for seed soaking and bare root soaking?
Yes, so on this here, this recipe here, the question was, should I add IMO2 to this recipe when I'm doing my seed soak and my transplant soak? Yes. Yes, IMO2 is a great thing to add into that. I didn't list it here at all. I just took this from another spot.
You said something about the roots, and I didn't catch what you said. You said you have to clip some roots?
You can bare root the plant, soak it into your liquid, and then when you plant it, spread the roots out. Yeah, so they're going to reach out. Be gentle with the roots. You know, don't try to like just force them to do things, but be gentle. Kind of spread them out. You know, be nice to your plant. But it'll be fully loaded. And I'd soak a tree for about an hour. You know, that way it's really well soaked. I don't get mulch. Yes. Yeah, so treat your mulch, compost it, use like make this spray it on your mulch, get it all nice and biologically active. Yep, so vegetables, same thing. Vegetables, you want to soak about 15 minutes in there, do those things, spread them out. It's not as much time. But the same spreading the roots out. So instead of digging a deep hole, kind of spreading the vegetables out. Yeah, that's what you want to do. You don't want to put them in a hole. You want to actually make a little thing, spread them out as best you can, cover it over. Should be good to go. Absolutely. So Master Cho talks about it. It's like when he talks about bare rooting the vegetables, he talks about how it's like he talks about it like marriage, where like the girl that was like all happy and had her ways of doing things then tries to bring those with her to like the husband that's not as poor and then struggles, versus you take her and like bare root and like separate from those and then go and just be happy. It's a similar, I don't know. So
Don't bring your baggage.
yeah. Don't try to bring a whole bunch of baggage with you. Prime, great way of saying it.
The idea of spreading the roots is very important. I saw macadamia nut trees that girdled themselves because they were root bound in the pot when they were planted, and it just strangled themselves in a few years.
Yeah. So the tree breathes oxygen through its roots. If you bury it down into your hard pan or down in a hole where there's no oxygen and it fills up with water and there's no oxygen, it's gonna die. The tree wants oxygen in its roots.
So if you have like a little baby tree that you already planted, can you like dig it out? Like if you want to try to save it, can you try to like dig it out and then soak it and then make a new type of situation for it?
Great question. Existing plantings. I've already put my tree into a hole. What do I do? My dad planted a bunch of trees at my house his method of putting in great growth first couple of years. Now they're all dying. Just the tips they're running out of oxygen. They've root balled themselves. What am I doing? I'm going to the four corners of my tree, and I'm in soil, so I'm digging a hole down, and I'm filling that with this tea. So the four corners I'm digging, and I'm soaking. I put cinder into those holes, and I'm soaking them with the tea because I'm trying to bring that soil alive. So those roots that are in this hole will then reach out and grow into this new aerobic zone that I'm creating. Now, out here, they're just like post hole kind of thing that I dug. Out here, you're not going to be digging holes into your lava to think it's going to grow out of its lava hole, because that just isn't going to work. What you want to do is like this picture right here at the bottom. I got my tree. It's there. I'm going to make a ring of mulch around it and either spread the dust around this ring or soak it heavily with this in that ring around, so that these mulch ring is really working. The tree is then going to be like, oh, and reach out to that zone. That's where it wants to grow anywhere. That's where the feeder tips are, is right in the zone around the drip line. The drip line is like, if I soaked it with water, where are the drips ending? That's your drip line. So making a donut around it. A foot, 2 feet, 3 feet wide, depends on how much mulch you can have access to or what you want to do. But the more you do that, the more those roots are going to go, oh, cool, and go into that spot and be happy. And instead of just staying in that hole, they will reach out. So I don't recommend going and digging up trees. I think just retroactively fixing with these two scenarios of either soaking compost tea into the ground or putting mulch so they'll grow out and be happy.
Wait. Should we take our rock rings away? A lot of us, as we dig holes, get the rocks out to protect the plant and so forth. We have our mulch and the set, the present drip line, and maybe a little expanded. Then around that we pile the rocks. Should we take those away? Because they're compressing the dirt and all that.
No, so compression we can think of. Majority of compression comes actually from rain. So when we think, oh, we drove a heavy vehicle or we pressed this, like, we're giving ourselves too much credit. We're not that heavy. Putting the rocks around, what the rocks around do is they'll bring water in. Go look under those rocks on a hot day. It's wet. Very good idea. If I had rocks like that, I would be making rock rings. My dad would kill me, but... Best yet is a guy out here, Clive Cheatham. If you don't know him, you should go check him out. He lives just right by Four Corners, down Kabul. And what he does is he grows a fruit tree and then he stick mulches the crap out of it. So he got a tree in the center here, and he just piles all kinds of sticks around it, like a mountain high, and then he spaces his trees on like 80 feet. Because in that whole thing, he has a huge, like 12-foot stick mound around each. The roots are going nuts. That entire thing's filled with roots. It's all overgrown with hono grass and whatever kind of stuff. You get up to his lime or lemon tree or whatever tree he's growing, and there is like a ton, if not more, fruit on it. It's just pumping because the roots are up in this feeder zone. They're happy. He's putting all the sticks. Just by doing that, he will have really rich indigenous microorganisms. What I'm suggesting here is just like a kickstart method to get this system going. It can be established naturally. So I think it's a good thing to talk about. Oftentimes we talk about permaculture. That's a kind of permaculture concept. Natural farming is 100% compatible with permaculture. A lot of permaculture systems, you'll see, they'll really start thriving after about 3 years of being in. You set the guild up, you're getting everything there, you kind of got to maintain it for a while. After 3 years, it's pretty much self-sufficient. You can kind of walk away from a system like that. What this enables you to do is to take the microorganisms and kickstart it, and instead of 3 years, you can now do it in about a month. You're 1 month of setting this soil foundation. You've got all the microbes that that system would have made naturally in 3 years. You just jump-started them right here. So anytime you're learning permaculture, hearing these ideas, 100% compatible with natural farming. Natural farming is like what happens under the ground and under the soil. Permaculture is what happens above. So I practice permaculture up here, Korean natural farming down here. Same thing, they go hand in hand. And you can kick-start those systems with Korean natural farming. So
if you have a plant that's been pot bound, what's the best way to get it in the ground? Just like, do you need to loosen the roots, or?
So take the plant, shake off as much of the dirt as you can, soak it in the seed soaks, this solution here, for about an hour. The roots will start to get more pliable because they're soaking, they're wet, just like anything you soak in water gets wet like that. Then kind of massage it out, as gently as you can to make it go so it reaches out. Instead of roots curling in balls up on each other,
right.
You want to soak it first, then massage them out and put them in so they're going to grow out instead of that way.
What about using air pruning with the old system?
I have no experience with air pruning. I'm assuming it would work. My seed bed is up, so it air prunes itself. It seems to work.
Going back to the garden, the IMO 4, if you spread the IMO 4 on the garden bed, and then you put your solution on top of that, don't you want to add a little bit of mulch on top to keep the bacteria and fungus out of the sun, direct sunlight?
Okay, so the question is, after I put this stuff, do I want to cover it with mulch? The answer is, sorta. Yes, being because it always makes sense. That cover there is going to get digested. It's going to retain moisture. It's going to have a lot of benefits. However, I see these systems run, like here I get so much grass, I always mulch everything I'm doing. I mulch heavy. Korea, I see these systems where they don't have the grass pressure that we do. They just leave it bare dirt. They've gotten all the biology that the mulch or like a cover crop or other things would have provided, those benefits you get. What happens is if I do it in this afternoon, and I put them out, by the time I come back, the sun rises the next morning, they've already had 20 generations of adapting in that night. What happens at night, the dew comes out of the air, they've had all this excess moisture to work with to go. They've already found their way into their little niche in the soil. So when the sun rises the next morning, they're already well prepared. So you don't necessarily have to cover them right away. I'm growing turmeric. I didn't have enough stuff to mulch it. I use this IMOs. the soil's still rich and tilthy, as if you're under a fruit tree and you see that nice balled up dirt. It's that same nature. The dirt's not compacted and it looks rich soil because I did that and I didn't mulch it. I wanted to mulch it. I should have, because now there's a whole bunch of weeds and stuff. But anyway. So question.
How would you, Kamakura, in grass, how would you stock your mirrors?
I would get animals. Animals love guinea grass to eat guinea grass. Question.
Yeah, along those lines, what about weed barrier cloth and its effect on, so maybe weed is a kill for 2 or 3 months down?
So weed barrier cloth, totally fine. Tarping areas, you know, it's the not so fine part about it is it's like plastic, which is going to end up in our whole ecosystem. But using it, you know, present day, it's a decent choice. So my dad's growing a whole bunch of pineapples. He puts he runs the spader over it. He then comes and puts in all the biochar and IMOs and does this seed soak solution. As he's doing that, then he covers it with weed mat and then pokes holes and plants into that. We spray the pineapples foliarly, but they're going off. I mean, we just harvested a pineapple that was like, you know, twice as big as a baby. So I didn't use cardboard. It's not a resource that I have available. But think about this. We're all adults. We all have good ideas. Think about what resources do you have, what makes sense. Especially think about the ecology and think about the future generations when you're making choices. But you know, we all can adapt to our local climate. Question.
Yeah, I hate to bring up a distasteful subject, but I grew up in an agricultural area, traditional black earth, corn farming part of America. And the farmers there sometimes would soak their seed in urine. And I was just wondering, since we're talking about solutions and all that, is there any role in Korean natural farming that human urine comes into play?
Okay, so the question is about urine. Farmers were soaking their seeds in urine. Urine's super high in uric acid, which is turns into nitrogens. Has a lot of good things in it. So when young Song comes, he's Master Cho's son. He makes everyone at his class bow down before, and say, I am a fertilizer machine. I promise you that I will use the fertilizer I produce. Because some of the richest fertilizer comes out of the human body. Night soil plus your golden shower. Right? I don't talk about it because there's a lot of stigma about it, plus there's regulations on it. But if you read the older natural farming books, there's huge chapters on it and talks about the benefits of it. Use your sensibility with it. You know, anytime you're using something like that where, you know, I would use your own, don't get it from someone else. And also lactobacillus is your friend. Anytime you're fermenting with, the one thing about human waste is it's so rich that it can cause a lot of things to get nuts really fast. So just be careful with it. But yeah, you totally can use all those things. Ferment them first, then use them.
Do you need to dilute the urine?
I'm not going to give any recommendations on it.
I just wanted to add something to that. Plants adapt to our RNA, our DNA, help provide us with what we need to become balanced. So when you take that component out of your growing your food, when you grow your own food and you use those fertilizers, plants will adapt to kind of like personalized.
Yep. So the comment in question is on the DNA and RNA that are present in your excrement. That the plants will respond to those and actually tune themselves to your body. That's why I was saying, when you're making your seed soak solution, put a little bit of your saliva in there. I'm not saying what else to put in there, but you can use your imagination. So I think here I've kind of covered majority of this. The last graphic I wanted to bring your attention to is this one here, which is basically talking about the longer you practice natural farming, like in the very beginning, we're just trying to get our first inch or so. If you brought an inch of soil into this thriving life system, majority of what you're going to do, your plants are going to have disease resistance. They're going to have less nutrient deficiency because the microbes can transfer nutrients where they want. You're building a solid foundation to build something on top, and that's crucial. The longer you can do this, the richer it becomes. The more microbes you get living on the surface, microbes love dissolving rock. So if you look at your rock and you think, well, what am I going to do with this rock? Put some mulch over it, get the microbes in there, they will dissolve it and make it into amazing stuff as soon as possible. Yeah, no, I'm right there. Awesome, Steve. Yeah, thank you, Steve. Follow me. So the depth that I've seen farmers in Korea where the only thing he does is he adds a little calcium before he's harvesting, and that's so he gets better shelf life. He doesn't do anything for the soil. I've seen places where you can take a rod and jam it down into the soil a couple meters and it goes just right through like butter. My place, Chris and Lisa got to see where I'm growing cassava, and literally the top, 6-8 inches is like you can take your hand and stick it into the ground. It's no longer like cement sticking your hand in. So the longer I practice these things, the more I put them out, the more your soil just aerates up, rock dissolves, the microbes get in there, and it gets soft and easy to work with. So any last questions before we take our break here? Cool. Oh, one more.
Yeah, I had that question on this one. You did mention that the FAA you would add at a later time, and I wasn't clear about what you meant about that.
So I'm done brewing this tank. So now we're back over here with this tank brewing thing that I did here. I'm done brewing this tank. Now I'm going to dump this into my sprayer or put my sprayer hose in. Wait. Add my FAA. So I take that, measure it out, drop it in, stir it. Now I go spray it. So I'm no longer bubbling it.
What about when you're mixing it over here without the sprayer?
If you're not bubbling it, you can add the FAA.
Anytime.
The reason you don't want to add the FAA is when I'm bubbling it, it gets too nuts. It's like adding gasoline to an already raging fire. It's just not necessary.
So I could do it before or after.
But after the coals are going down, you got coals and you want to stoke that fire, throw a little gasoline on there. Not that I recommend this. I burned the crap out of myself one time. Lucky I'm still alive. Don't do it. But you get the concept. Okay, so we'll take a break here, and then when we come back, we'll do the microscope. Okay, so you guys are really lucky. Well, not lucky. You're in the right place at the right time, and that's good. Because the level 1 training you guys are getting is good out there. Usually this is done in a few. This is like a 12-hour certification thing where largely you get some hand waving, really exposure to what we're doing. But I was asked to be out here to do this. I'll get that part going. Oh, source, yeah. Probably I gotta actually wake up my computer. Maybe. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, so there. Is it showing enough of it?
It is, yeah, that'll work. I'll work with what we got.
Okay, you can put something on it to prop it up.
Cool. So I have been learning natural farming since 2008. And in the very beginning when I learned, it was like trying to interpret what's this crazy book. Like, if you read the book, you know, like how ambiguous and just like having training, it's hard. Through that time, I've been like going and getting trainings with Master Cho, with Gil Karangdang, with Young Song Cho. But one of the biggest trainings I took that really enhanced my ability to become a proficient natural farmer was a course I took with Elaine Ingham. And she's a professor, she has a doctorate. She used to work at Oregon State University for many years. She's created an organization called the Soil Food Web. And I believe that lab still is in existence. There's basically a dozen or so people that got together. And what Elaine did was she brought a tool into my life that enabled me to go from just magic to highly scientific. So science is making observations. You know, this is a natural science. I don't have to know every specific thing. But just saying make good compost or make good IMO is a very vague statement. So she introduced me to this tool right here. It's a microscope to do microbiological analysis. There are other ways to do microbiology, such as plating. So you take a plate of something, you expose something to it, and you grow something out and say, oh, is it present or not? We know a lot about pathogens because plating works really good for pathogens. So I have an E. coli, I expose it to an agar, it starts growing on this plate, I can count colonies, I can count these things. We know a lot about that stuff. What we don't know a lot about is the stuff that won't grow on a plate, which is about 80 to 90% of what's in the soil. So 80 to 90% of the stuff, I cannot use that method to do analysis because it just doesn't work. They grow on certain media, they like certain conditions. I can't do that way. So Elaine, one day was like working with her, did some microscope stuff with their grandpa. They were analyzing why there was all this die-off of these oysters in this bay in Texas. I forget the name of it. But all these oysters were dying off, and they kept thinking it was a bacteria thing, and they would go and they would sample, and they were plating, and no one could get this answer. And she was like, well, my grandpa did it with just a microscope live. So instead of trying to grow a culture, just look at what's in the environment and analyze it. And what she started to notice was that every single time they brought a boat out of the bay that they had done this treatment, this anti-barnacle treatment on, it killed off this certain set of microbes, which then killed off all the oysters. So by doing this analysis, instead of trying, you couldn't see it any other way, but by looking visually at the things, she could see what was happening. So she taught me how to use my t-shirt as one of the most important things for using a microscope. But what I'm going to do today is take this somewhat clear slide. I really need to go purchase new slides. I do this with kids and they just shatter them all, so I have like 4 left that actually work. They're really fragile and they love breaking them. So hopefully today we're going to be cool. But I take a clear slide and a microscope, and I did my best to clean this thing off. It was just riding in my truck, which is not the cleanest environment. Or it's clean, it's just not sterile or whatever you call that. And I'm going to do some analysis of this. So taking some of my microbial tea that I brewed, putting a drop onto my slide, and then taking this sweet little cover slip and dropping that on top and keeping it all together, I now have a way to do analysis. This is super easy for compost tea because I can just do this and get some analysis. I can also use this tool to do soil sampling. So when I do soil sampling, I get out my fancy tool here. And I fill it with, so I typically do a 1 to 5 dilution. So what I do is I fill this up with water to 4 milliliters of water to that line. And then I take the soil I want to sample and I grind it up and I drop it in until it rises up to my 5 milliliters. Now I got a 1 to 5 dilution. For doing soil analysis, I would take this and very consistently, oh, my thumbnail's too large to do this right now, is very consistently shake it for 30 seconds. Once a second, really consistently. I'm not going to shake it real hard and then I'm going to shake it really consistently enough to get the biology off the dirt and into the water. Because I need to get it off the dirt and into the water to look at it through this clear microscope thing here. Doesn't me no good if it's on there. But if I'm consistent in my shaking and I shake them all the same, then I can do this environment, that environment, my environment before treatment, just my tea, then do the environment after treatment and see how effective am I at getting the biology out where it needs to be, which is, you know, in my garden where I want it to grow. So this simple tools here, what I recommend is maybe working with the Farmers Union to get one of these, have it at your meeting so you can come do soil sampling. Also, sometimes I bring this to the natural farming meeting. I haven't for a while, but hooing together to get a microscope, because they're nice ones, which I'd buy a pretty decent one, are like this one here is about $700 when I all said and done. With the trinocular and the camera and everything.
What type of microscope is that?
So before I get to that, Ginger John will be speaking next Thursday, not Saturday.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Next Thursday is mine. He'll be the following Thursday after it. So, okay. Thank you. I almost made 2 errors on that. He follows my class Thursday, speaking here, not Saturday. Saturday is the Mango Festival. So what kind of microscope do I need here? What's in front of you is a microscope that's it's made out of metal, which I like. I bought some from my school that are made out of plastic, and they kind of suck. But it's good for the kids because they break a lot of things. And what I'm looking for is one that has a condenser on it. So if I pull this condenser out of here, this little condenser, you need this piece. What this does is it concentrates the light from the below into it, so you need a condenser on yours. It has a light source on the bottom. You can't just use one of those ones with a mirror and expect that to work. This microscope where I'm using it is 400 times typically. It goes up to 2,000. I don't need 2,000. That's overkill. It's more than I need. 400 times is going to give me my sweet spot. If I put in different lens pieces up here, I can make it 800 times if I want to zoom in twice as much. But I just use the 10 times objectives. And so I got 10 times up here, and then I'll multiply at the bottom times 4, times 10, or times 40. So that gives me 40 times magnification, 100 times, and 400 times magnification. All 3 of those magnifications are nice to look at microbiology. So what I'm going to do is not demonstrate anything. No. Is now you are looking at what my microscope is seeing, and right now it's seeing nothing because the light is off, so I'm going to turn the light on. Let there be light, and there was. And I'm going to kind of go through and show you just as I go through this slide, when I see things of interest, kind of point them out. You'll be able to see what I'm looking at. So let's see here. So I'm going to start looking at my slide at 100 times. So what you're going to see up there is zoomed in 100 times. Hopefully. Oh man, this is what. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay. So let me adjust this so you guys can see. So this is probably one of the least ideal conditions to do this because you guys are looking at a washed out screen in daylight through a thing that's already kind of washed out. But hopefully we're all on the same page here in terms of focus, so you can see me moving around. So what I'm going to do right now is find the corner of my slide. There we go, corner of my slide. And I am going to do a search first through. This isn't necessarily as pertinent in tea as it is in the soil sample. But I'm going to search my slide first for nematodes, because nematodes are big snake-looking things, worm-looking things, and you can scan through really quickly to find them. Once you found them, you can zoom in, and if you just did nematology, so you just looked at your nematodes, it would tell you a lot about your soil. So finding your nematodes, identifying what type they are, and going with them is a good thing to do. So I'm just going to scroll across here. My cover slip didn't make it on. And so I'm going relatively fast through my slide because you'll be able to see them. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going from one edge, see I'm back to the edge here again, down, although it looks like it's moving sideways for you guys. And then I'm going back across. So that looks like something interesting. I'm not exactly sure what that is. We'll maybe come back to it. So that's not a nematode, it's like plant matter or something like that. That big chunk there, that big chunk there is like some plant material. It's on my slide. So scrolling across, seeing what I'm seeing. And like I expected, I did not find a nematode yet, and we'll see. This is but this is the analysis that I do to check things out to see if it's worthwhile on my tea, and this is worthwhile for me. I was hoping we'll see a whole bunch of biology in here, and this would be a really good batch. However, someone asked me before today, is it better to do, is the timing the same for a 36 hours, the same for a 5-gallon bucket? And one of the telltales I was looking at when I was doing analysis is that there wasn't very much foam on the top of this. There was more foam yesterday than there is today. So that's why it's good to adjust my times. Okay. So no nematodes, that's not unexpected. This is a tea. I wouldn't expect nematodes to grow on this tea. They would be much more in your soils, those types of things. But essentially I just scanned my entire slide. It was super easy to do. Now what I want to do is to do an analysis to see how much fungus is in it. So fungus is the main thing I'm looking for. That's what I want to get into my soil. That's what I want to look for. So I'm going to increase my magnification. I'm now at 400 times.
So it's a good thing there are no nematodes, yeah?
No, not necessarily. Well, I wouldn't expect to see them in a tea like this. But is it a good thing? So nematodes are not bad. Does anybody know anything about nematodes? So I know I'm throwing out some terms here, and I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page. So what nematodes are very important components of the soil food web. So when I have a bacteria is like 10 parts nitrogen, and a nematode, when it eats it, is only going to digest 2 of those parts. So then it's going to poop out 8 parts of nitrogen. So bacteria tend to be very high in nitrogen. They're like little bags of 16 or whatever. And the nematodes, they're attracted to the root zone because the bacteria's sugars are coming out, so the bacteria's there. The nematode swims through eating them, and then its poop comes out and took this living bag and now made it into a plant-available nitrogen source. So nematodes are super important in your ecosystem. Oftentimes we all think, oh no, there's nematodes, but we're just thinking about the root feeders because we haven't set up our soil foundation. And that is that's why we have a negative connotation. But there are bacterial feeders, there's fungal feeders, there's plant feeders, and there's predatory nematodes. And by just analyzing your nematodes, you can find out how good your soil is. You won't find predatory nematodes in bad soil. So if you look through, you never find a predatory nematode, you know your soil's not that great. You look through, you see a bunch of bacterial feeders, nothing else, you know you got high bacterial content. You're looking through and you see a whole bunch of fungal feeders, which I've seen when my friend buried IMO in a pot, and then we did some soil analysis out of that. Fungal feeders were going nuts. His plant was fine though because he didn't have root feeders. Root feeders cause when you dig up your plant, there's all those nodules underneath. Those are from root feeding nematodes. And the reason they're there is because your fungus manages those guys, and your fungus isn't healthy enough to trap them. If you look at the book, like Mycelium Running, the first page, they have this little donut-looking thing where a nematode crawls through, the fungus tightens on it, and it eats those nematodes. So fungus will manage your nematode population. So that's why I'm always going to fix the fungus. I'm always saying, okay, like all this other stuff, great, but the fungus is the manager. They're the building structure like this that enables all the rest of the life to happen. So what I'm looking for in my microscope is fungus. So this is a fungus here, fungal body, at least I hope it is. It looks pretty compelling that it is. Should probably find a little bit better one to like talk sorry about, because this one's like, but what I'm looking for to see fungus is I'm looking for a uniform tube shape happening. So this guy on its edges is uniform. It's not like getting bigger or smaller. It's a uniform tube. Just because of the nature of the tea brewing and or your soil sample shaking it up, you will break them into chunks like this. When they're growing in the soil, this is how they're transporting nutrients from over here to over there, except for these guys get, miles long. So they suck in a nutrient over here and they transport it to where they need it over here. And so there are these tubes that are forming in the soil. And this is what I'm looking for when I'm doing analysis. This guy here,
400 power?
yeah. This is 400. Zoomed in. This guy here is not that great. So I found a fungus. Awesome. This fungus isn't that great. I know that because it's skinny and it's white. No.
It's cool, man.
No, it's skinny and it's clear. Okay? So when I'm looking through my soil sample, I see skinny, clear guys. Those are often the fungus that are like cleaning other things up. It's not that they're bad, like trichoderma and those things tend to look like this. And they're cleaners. That's what they're doing in the ecosystem. This guy here, this is probably some sort of algae looking thing. This round globular here is an algae as I'm looking through. So let me see if I can do this. So these guys here, can you see how they're segmented a little bit? And there's another one that kind of broke off here. These guys are yeasts. Yeasts are good. I'm looking for yeast. It's kind of an aerobic fungi type of thing that does a lot of things. Way too much wouldn't be good. It means there's a lot of alcohol in there. But the right amount of yeast are good. So these guys reproduce by budding. So they'll grow and then they'll bud off a new guy and they'll keep growing. He's awesome. So let's see what else we got in here. Another algae looking guy. So this here is plant material, just like, chilling. Here we go, more yeast. Oh, okay. Oh, do you see that swimming around? You see that guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a protozoa. He came through. Yeah, they're fast. Look at that guy. And they get pissed when you put them under the light because it gets hot. Okay, and then you see there's another small little lactobacillus swimming around in there, kind of by that chunk of stuff. I don't know if you can see him. Try and follow him. What's that? Let's see if I can bring him to focus.
Oh, yeah.
So you see, there's a skinny stick cruising around. You see that small little stick? I don't know if you can see him.
It's like a little dot. White dot.
Okay, that little dot. Let me try and
leaving the field. Off the top. It's off.
Okay, and I don't know if you can even see him. Her resolution is good enough. There are tiny little sticks. Yeah, you guys are looking at a really washed out picture. So this little dot, this little dot here is probably a flagellate moving around. So the first guy we saw, the bigger bus looking guy that was cruising around, that was going real fast, zipping around. He's a ciliate, which they love alcohol. They'll party. They'll destroy everything. If you see ciliates, they're really good at decomposition, those types of things. You want a certain amount of them, but not a whole lot. They have cilia all over them, which are little hairs, and they use them and they zoom around really fast. The guy over here, this guy here moving, if you can see him, he's kind of a rounder guy. He's moving a bit slower. Yeah, he's a flagellum, which means he's a bigger protozoa. But what he has is one or two flagellums, and he's like using them as like a boat propeller. And he's moving around and he's going. He uses those things to eat things and grab on, and he's good. We want a lot of flagellates. We want a certain balance of flagellates. So there's a few. There's one there. There's some other stuff. Oh shoot! Hang on, my computer's went off. Yeah, I can also do. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I'm standing in front of it. Hang on. Is that helping you guys? Okay. Yeah, it's hard for me to tell. I got a lot of different things of adjustments here.
On the screen, there's a white dot moving down.
So, and then the other stuff, the other things that are moving, like just washing, it's just because this thing is being hit and there's pressure on the slide and there's a little water moving around. They're all in water. So when you see them jumping like that, they're not alive or anything. It's the nature of our setup here. And we are looking 400 times into something. So it's, there's a lot of, they're moving just a tiny bit. So these are yeasts. What I could see through my lens, and I'll try to get it focused up here, is you see something like this type of tube-looking thing. I actually saw a bunch of lactobacillus. I can see it through the microscope itself, but they're like little tubes like this, but they're moving. And those are lactobacillus moving around. And this here might be a fungus again. So I grew a whole bunch of yeast in here. It's interesting.
Do you know of a resource where we could get a table that would give us, we had our own microscope that would tell us what's
So that's an air bubble. What the hell I did? Yeah, question. Holy heat. This projector puts out a lot of heat. What the heck just happened?
It's boiling.
Yeah, no. So this projector is putting out so much heat, it's actually dehydrating my slide as I'm looking through it. So that's what's happening. So let me go to another spot that's not dehydrated yet. All the microbes on there are like, ah.
Who's that? Who's that? Oh, there's something moving.
No, so a nematode is going to be much larger than this. Damn, that's hot. Whew. I'm sweating up here. This projector is like cooking. Yeah, it's almost that long. Okay, so here we go, okay? So found another chunk of fungus. This is primarily what I'd look for. So the idea is are we past time? Oh no, good. So these guys here, this is a fungus that's branching out a little bit and it's just going in there. Little bit darker color than the other one, so this one might be a little bit more beneficial, but it's still pretty skinny in terms of its size. So to do a size analysis, there's ways where you can get like a scale to look. I'll get some more guys to look. But essentially the smallest dots you can see are 1 micrometer in width. And what you want to do is take one of those and see how many you could stack across. So if I look at this guy and I put 1 dot, this is maybe 1.5 micrometers in width. Like kind of just looking at the width here, it's like 1.5 micrometers, which means that it's still skinny. What I'm looking for is fungus that is 3.5 micrometers or thicker. And those are the good guys that are running nutrients through, that are going to have associations with your plants, that are going to be doing all these great things. There's a stick cruising. I don't know. I got in the light and it was like, bad choice.
There's a little zippy dot across the top, left to right. the little circle.
Yeah, it looks like the water's moving this way from when it got.
Could they keep growing as once you get it in the ground and then keep producing the growing bigger and stronger? Or?
Yep, yep. That is the idea. And so. This here, plant material. The roots slough a lot.
So do you think that maybe yesterday when you saw the foam was the time to quit cover?
Yeah, I definitely missed this thing. It was past its peak already. But good to know, good to see. And so what happened is I grew a whole bunch of yeast instead of the fungus, which is still a good thing, but I didn't grow as much fungus as I would like to have, or at least it wasn't in this sample. So I remind you, we're just looking at one drop from a whole bucket. Like, even then that, like, just one drop. So there's so much, like, the amount of life that I've made that is in this drop that's here is just like, I made trillions and trillions of these things. So this looks like a butt crack bubble.
That was the booby bubble right there.
But I think I'm drying this slide out as I look at it.
Yep.
So try to do it in a cooler area. I want to find a good fungus to show you guys, but it looks like my slide is drying up and
Do you record this on your computer, Adam?
sometimes, yeah. So even though this looks like a fungus, this is plant material, I reckon. Unless this is a fungus. I think it's a plant material, though. See how there's like text. So see how there's like texture in this? That means it's plant material. Yeah, I sometimes do. This camera's kind of hard to work with. I wish I had a better camera. So be careful when you're buying a camera, because the manufacturer will sell you software with the camera, and it's great because it works, but that's all the functionality you get is with that one. Versus, I'm always looking for a camera that can just hook into the computer, so I could write my own software for it. But they have their own like proprietary drivers, and you got to use their software to see it. So it's a bummer, because there's some cool programs out there, that third-party programs for doing microscope analysis, that if you had a camera you could just look through without having to use their software, would be good. So there's another skinny fungus. Let's see. I was hoping there would be nice, good fungus in here. It'd be like, oh yeah. But this is why I use a microscope to see what I'm doing.
Is there anything that you could do to increase the fungus at this point?
At this point, no. I kind of got to start over.
What would happen if you take a little bit of IMO4, put it in a test tube, did your shaking, and then put it up there? Isn't the IMO4 fungal in nature? Yeah.
I'd want to like hatch it out a little bit before I could do that. I mean, I could do soil samples too, but here's a good fungus. This one's wide enough. There's some other stuff zooming around. But this fungus here, it's a segmented one. So as it's growing, it'd be segmented. It's darker in color, and it's also thicker and wider. And so that's what I'm looking for when I'm actually trying, like, certain soils I go sample, I find lots of it, like where I've been using this method a whole lot. I was hoping there would be a whole bunch in this tea, but I think I overbrewed it a little bit based on its size and everything. So But does everyone kind of see the concept in the general analysis that I can do? So if I was to go and say, oh, is this going to be a good fungal tea for my fruit trees? What's the answer? Right?
There's one drop that would be a good way of evaluating that whole bucket.
No, I mean there's science. You can do your own science on it of like how many drops you do in different things. You know, and usually, you know, to do a sample, I would put a few different drops from different, you know, and do more analysis. Really, you know. And the main way to do soil analysis on this is just to put your slide under there to do your check for your nematodes. Then what you do is you scroll to 20 random spots. So I'm looking through and I'm going to like some particular spot to show you guys. You just twist those two knobs, go to a random spot, and then you do a count. How much fungus is in this view? This is called a view, one view that I'm looking at. And how, you know, how much fungus is there? You know, in this case, I could say 1, right? Maybe, I don't know if that's really skinny. So, and I would say, okay, there's one thick one like questionable skinny one, and then, and I'd stay there for maybe a few seconds to see if anything comes through. Is there any active bacteria? Is there any protozoas or nematodes in there? And I'll do my soil analysis that way. And Elaine has a really good course if you want to learn how to do this. And, you know, Elaine Ingham. Yeah. Like ING ham. Ingham.
If you were to take a sample while it was bubbling, do you get more truer picture of it?
If I took this sample yesterday, I would have probably more beneficial fungus. Because as the fungus, as they start to run out of food, they're going to go into spore form, and then they're not going to be out active and around. And maybe, and who knows here, I had it bump, they might have sunk to the bottom or something. Like, had I stirred this up before I'd done it, there's a whole bunch of variables on, like, you know, so you want to be consistent in your analysis. But seeing how, I think what happened is I bubbled it too long, and for such a small volume, they ate the food too fast, and I still grew a bunch of yeasts, which means they had a fun time. There's one of those little lactobacilluses.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, so that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm looking through. Take an IMO, bubble it a little bit to see how my biology turned out. You know, did I make a good pile? Did I not? And you know, but clearly with a 5-gallon bucket size, I should do it a bit sooner. Yeah.
The beneficial fungus is generally a darker color, you're saying?
Yeah, and the beneficial fungus will also have tends to have these segments parts. So instead of just one whole like straw, it has sections in the straw.
So the darker color is a function of a thicker wall that you're looking through?
Probably. It's the thick brown one.
So if you don't have access to a microscope, basically just follow the recipe and try it out and see what happens, or is there any other way to tell like how effective this is?
So just, yeah, so if you don't have a microscope here, looking at this, I should have done it when it was foaming and frothing on top. Should have known, okay. And if you're doing the same recipe, you know, one time you burn the bread, next time bake it a little less. Same with this, like you see it, okay, like, you know, and adjust. Yeah, I was unsure. I wanted to kind of see. So when I'm going for my trash can, it's all like frothy and foamy and colony collapse in this one. So educational nonetheless, right?
Thank you.
Question?
So this versus just putting it in a bucket and using it, is it like how many times better, or like what's the real difference in area?
You grow more beneficial fungus faster aerating it. They need oxygen to air, access to air to grow. No. Good, interesting thought, but not. It's not chemical oxygen that they're after. Jadam, I'm not going to talk about that, but you can do analysis. So, to answer your question, where you're saying hydrogen peroxide, you're going to H2O, and then you're going to get a single O coming in versus like an O2. So it's different thing. It's actually a poison versus a benefit.
If you mixed it in the bucket without oiling it, would you still see the foamy on top?
Not as much. Any other questions?
Do you have a source that has drawings of these microorganisms?
Yep. I should have brought the book. So Elaine Ingham published a book through the NRCS, and it's called Soil Biology Primer. And that's a good one to use. You can also just look online for her charts. So if you want to study more into soil biology, I'd really check out Elaine and her classes. She has a lot of good things to look at. So my point for doing this is it really helped me do analysis, right? So I'm practicing Korean natural farming. Now I can see. You know, before Master Cho tells me, brew a tea, do this stuff, and it's like, okay, I did it. Now you can see, like, this one clearly could have been better in certain ways, right? So this enables me to practice and change my practice in a way that's using his concepts and his principles and really then get a good picture of what's happening and what's going on.
It may be a question out of the outside of what this class is all about, but is there ever a role that mold can play in developing soil?
So yes, so the question is about mold. Mold is a generic term for like microbiology growing that we don't know what it is. Just call it mold. So yes, so you will, as you're practicing this, you will see things that get moldy. So yes, are they good mold? Are they bad mold? It all depends. Usually with microbiology, it's a function of food. Lots of good food, lots of good biology. Scarce food, pathogens, things that are getting gnarly and nuts come in. So it's a function of food.
So, kind of a little more, I've seen IMO food on YouTube videos, and it seems like they grow a lot of white stuff, whereas the black mold is not necessarily really beneficial to
Yes. So visually looking at microbes when you catch them on your rice, the white stuff is nice aerobic, soil-loving, good fungus. And it's also diverse. When you're looking at it and it's tie-dye colored or black, those tend to be, the tie-dyes are anaerobic. And they're colorful. And if it's starting to get black, Corinne brought me her IMO and it had a little darker spot on it, but it's just the microbes grew and then they started to collapse in that area. It's still totally fine. I tend to use the 80-20 rule in terms of if 80% of it's good, go with it. It's just, you're never, like, in almost all systems, you're never going to find 100% goodness of anything. We all have our flaws, right?
Do you take off, like, you cut off the black part?
Nope.
No.
Just mix it in. Yeah.
You know, in some places where I've tried to make soil, and I see a lot of like white streams. I thought it was roots, but it's not roots. I thought it was like roots coming up to get it was goat poop mixed with hay.
Yeah. So
I see stream is like white streams.
So the white strings we can see are typically fungal hyphae. They're called fungal hyphae, and it's what we were seeing. We were seeing a microscopic version of that, but they'll line each other. They'll make many of them, and then we'll actually see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Is it the same as mycelium farming?
Yes. Okay. So, any last question? Thank you guys all for coming. One last announcement that if you get a whole case of brown rice vinegar at Kilauea Market, you get 5% off. Kilauea Market, right near the Island Naturals in town, across Wiki Fresh. I don't know. 11, because it's no. Yeah.
We were at Kilauea yesterday, and they are feeling the positive economic benefit. Local store selling out of rice vinegar because of these kinds of classes. They're all for it.
Oh, good. I should get a sponsorship. Sort of. I work with cars, so it's like here from
I hope you two are able to get together and get some of that. Yeah. How long are you going to be here?
Yeah, as soon as it doesn't rain for a day, I'm up in the morning, I'm calling her, and I'm like, cool. Because there's so much here. The good thing that there's been a delay is I can find flowers.
To choose from.
I mean, more use for
So if the stock is coming down with bananas, you take those, or what flowers do you take?
So I can show you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm going to meet up with him tomorrow. I catch up with him last week.
Where are you catching? They should be tired of
No, but if you're taking it to be well suited to take that is it.
So then we do level 1 series here?
No, Jason's going to do that here this side. Just training him up to take on that. They're posted all on our website, so if you go there and see yes, we are so going back to last September.
So you get it in for the assessment, or is it
I go to non-one and I get it there.
Takes over.
As long as I am in my presence, I move your name to the board. So they got 50 bucks and then my name will be listed here. Okay, so we'll move you up here.
Okay.
His email address is
Okay. Yeah, cool. This guy tried to get the Federal Reserve. That's why they put all the presidents in the
They're supposed to change the tariff. Really? That's what they're talking about. Yeah, nothing's going to happen.
It's just like